Change is something that happens a lot in our lives. Psychologically, people are prone to not like change. In fact, it even has its own term called cognitive dissonance. Now, I'm a sucker for a really good story, and usually those come from having a significant change between the ending and the beginning. Something that really makes you feel like you've gotten somewhere. One key feature that games use to make a player feel this way is through its characters and character development. With all of this in mind, I need to talk about a profound experience I had regarding change playing a small indie game called Unpacking. Released in 2021, Unpacking is a Zen puzzle game about unpacking boxes into various rooms throughout a woman's life from adolescence to adulthood. It's a fun game with charming graphics. However, the thing that stood out to me the most is that there are no characters. Obviously, this isn't the only game on the planet with no characters, but Unpacking has a story hidden under its surface level gameplay that any player can generally understand. The game features cute, pixel-based graphics, a dynamic soundtrack, and fun, relaxing mechanics that you can just sit back and play as casually as can be. I mean, it can literally be played with just a mouse. Truthfully, it's a fun game, but what really piqued my interest about the game was how it tells its characterless story. Unpacking is a game with minimal dialogue and no characters, so it needs to tell its narrative in a completely unique way by weaving it through the unpacked objects that reflect someone's life and experience. The game is observed through a top-down, what I call God POV, which is a type of third-person POV that follows the world rather than a specific character. This POV is useful because you are the woman unpacking the boxes, however there is no physical character, only an implied one through the objects. Many of the items traverse throughout the different levels of the game, showing what the protagonist holds dearly to their life, while others disappear, showing what the protagonist has grown out of or had to leave behind. These additions and subtractions help to illustrate who the character of Unpacking is. Each level of the game features a different life-changing year, starting with the childhood room in 1997, all the way to the final home in 2018. These 21 years feature 8 different levels and progress through the protagonist's different living situations, such as having roommates or a boyfriend. If we look more specifically at the story, the girl begins in her childhood bedroom in 1997, where we are introduced to her interests in art and video games, as well as some recurring items like the pig plushie. The next level features the first time she's away from home in a university dorm during 2004. This level adds an extra few rooms, being a bathroom and a kitchen. She holds onto her plushie, video games and art supplies, but now had a big computer for university work, and an Eiffel Tower figurine suggesting a trip to Paris. Next, she has an entire house in 2007, with a bunch of pre-existing decor around, suggesting that she has moved in with roommates. The pig plushie again makes an appearance, however she now has a degree from the university and is upgraded to a digital tablet for her artwork. To conclude the first half of the game, she moves in with an apparent serious partner in 2010 that features a house with various nerdy and musical items, suggesting the common shared interests that they have. Unfortunately, there isn't much room for her in the apartment, suggesting she potentially isn't as welcomed as she thought. The player can't even find a spot on the wall to hang her degree and has to place it under her bed. The next level is where the protagonist's life is flipped completely around, as you are back in her childhood house, however in the year 2012 with an overabundance of gear. There is much evidence to suggest a breakup too. By the end, this room is jam-packed with too much stuff and feels crowded, showcasing that her life has become much larger since she first moved out. The following level features a new apartment in 2013 with plenty of room for everything and a refreshing start. The now worn pig plushie makes another appearance and has a pinboard where the character's ideas can flourish. This section marks a transition into our own life, containing a vast amount of creativity and expression, with 5 whole rooms belonging to only the protagonist. The next section of this takes a spin, and rather than unpacking the protagonist's items, you're in the same apartment unpacking the new girlfriend's gear, who seems to be a lot more organised than the protagonist with how she packed her items. Everything is a lot more harmonious, and the protagonist doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. Finally, the game concludes with the final level in 2018, where the protagonist and her partner have bought a house and are expecting a kid. There's plenty of room, and you can see how their lives have unfolded into this point. Unpacking tells its story in a non-explicit way. It's not in your face and is really subtle with how the game is played. The player has a lot of freedom with how they can decorate their rooms, however there are some restrictions which add to the puzzle element of the game. These restrictions also include important details about the protagonist's life. An example of this is the specific locations that the diary can be stored, or having to place a degree under the bed in the boyfriend's apartment. Over time, the protagonist's personality begins to flesh out and become apparent with new recurring items such as the drawing tablet or game consoles showing her passions and career. Other items and accolades like the degree show the progress and pathway in life she has made. Again, this is all told with no physical character or dialogue. It is honestly such a unique and intriguing method of storytelling and character development. Unpacking evokes our own feelings of excitement and going throughout life by using a universally relatable and nostalgic narrative. I think that having no actual character helps the game mesh this subtle story within our own lives. Unpacking's simplicity allows players to really ponder over the meaning of each object as they find a fitting and important place for it to go. On the surface, Unpacking is an incredibly simplistic game. However, under the hood, there are many fine details and intricacies that make it the award-winning game that it is. Unpacking was created by an Australian indie game studio called Witchbeam that features only a handful of staff. While Unpacking was created with the help of many people, the main brains behind the game are the technical director Tim Dawson and creative director Ren Breyer, who happens to be Tim's partner. The other major collaborators are Annie Vandermeer, who helped with the narrative, Angus Dolan as an artist, and Jeff Van Dyke as a composer and sound designer. The idea for the game came when Ren was unpacking things and thought that the items could really tell a story about someone's personality. Speaking of items, there are over 1,000 household items in the game that have their own individual sprite, which also come with at least one rotation. Some items even have multiple rotations. For example, some things can be rotated in all 4 directions, or a book can be stored on a shelf horizontal or vertical, back or front. All these items also interact really well with each other and the surrounding environment. You can open drawers and put items in the drawer. However, if you put something too tall in the drawer, it won't be able to close. Another example is if you have a cup in the bathroom, you're actually able to put a toothbrush inside that cup. The sound design by Jeff Van Dyke is amazing, who uses Foley to create most of the sounds in the game and has different sound effects depending on the room. The bathroom, for example, has a bit of an echo, whereas the kitchen does not, even though they both have tile floors. The final neat detail I'll talk about is the passage of time in this game. It's not in your face and you might not even consciously notice, but the time in the game passes as items are unpacked, helping to make the game not feel static. Tim Dawson wanted there to be a passage of time, however he didn't want players to feel rushed if it got to evening and they hadn't unpacked much. Overall, Unpacking is a brilliantly crafted game that tells a unique and nostalgic story using its subtle environment and hundreds of items that bring the hidden protagonist to life. The freedom of expression in the game allows players to weave in their own lives and own cultures, while still having rules that keep the player grounded in sensibility. The music and sound effects also help drive a cozy experience. It's truly a unique game and deserves the awards it receives.